Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. Today we're going to look at who's left available in the reliever market because, of course, Tanner Scott signed with the Dodgers. I'm going to lose my mind with this team. Come on, man.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air on 97.5 The Fanatic doing radio here in Philadelphia for 5 years now. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 3 seasons, and I've been the host of Locked On Phillies here for 4 years. So I appreciate you taking the time to check us out. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, hitting that subscribe button on the YouTube. Go to Locked On Phillies YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. It'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It's also a great way to help us out here on Locked On Phillies. So if you enjoy the content, if it's helping you get through this long, cold off season, well, hit that subscribe button. It's free. It's easy. It helps me out and it helps you out. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Before we get too deep into the episode, the Birds are going to the NFC Championship game. Check out Locked On Eagles. Great stuff by them. Always in the content game here for the Locked On Podcast Network. Go Birds. Can't go without saying it. Awesome weekend in Philadelphia sports. Now, obviously, we're keeping this almost exclusively to the Philadelphia Phillies. So let's get into the baseball. Today, we're going to discuss Tanner Scott signing with the Dodgers, which, come on, man. At this point, what am I even supposed to say? We're going to go through our Mailbag Monday questions, which includes a question about the Dodgers and also roster grade for the Philadelphia Phillies. I'll read the whole question to you so it makes sense from one of our listeners. And then we're going to take a look at what's next for the Phillies and do our off-the-poll question, or at least ask our off-the-poll question that I'm going to tweet out and respond to on Wednesday's show. But let's get started with... Let's get started with the Tanner Scott signing. I'm going to listen. I forget if I said it in the episode or not, but I knew when I did the last episode, and I complained about Roki Sasaki signing with the Dodgers on a minor league deal. He had to sign on a minor league deal because he didn't have the service time internationally to get a major league contract. That doesn't mean he can't pitch at the major league level, but so it's not like he cheated and gave him less money or anything like that. But I was annoyed with what's going on with the Dodgers offseason because high-level free agents are flocking to that team. And they were already the comfortable World Series winners this past year. Best record in the regular season, won the World Series without too much of a fight from the New York Yankees. They were darn good. And they've gotten better. And just as I'm having that conversation, well, I didn't realize I was heading into a weekend where Tanner Scott, who a lot of people wanted the Philadelphia Phillies to go out and sign, one of the best relievers available on the market, if not the best at the time he signed, goes to the Dodgers. And they just get that much better. I mean, people called me a crybaby. People said, if this was the Phillies, you wouldn't be complaining. I'm pretty sure I said in last episode, if this was the Phillies, I'd absolutely love it. So I'm not faulting the Dodgers for doing this. It's just I'm more faulting the individual players than the team. But I don't know. Tanner Scott got paid, and it's not like he took this major pay cut to go to the Dodgers. I don't even know what to say about Los Angeles at this point. This baseball season is verging on now. Nothing's decided, right? Nothing is decided until you actually play the season. It is 162 games. There are a lot of injuries that happen. There are a lot of things that can go crazy wrong. There are great teams that have lost before. And even if everything goes great through 162, postseason's a crapshoot. You never know what's going to happen. But you've got an uphill battle now in the National League. You already did. You have the steep uphill battle now in the National League. And there's an argument to be made that the Phillies are the second best team in the National League. A strong argument. And the gap between them and where the Dodgers are at right now could be substantial, depending on who you ask. So more than me saying, Dodgers are bad for baseball. I already made that argument. If you want to listen to me make that argument, you can go to my last episode. If you're a Dodgers fan that's continuing to check this out after yelling at me in the comments of the last episode, I appreciate you watching. Thank you. I admitted I knew people were not going to like that take last time, but I'm going to stand by it. I don't think what is happening with the Dodgers and this offseason and last offseason and the offseason before that and this team that they've compiled, I don't think it's good for baseball. I don't think the deferred money is good for baseball. I don't think players picking that team over equal money with other teams is good for baseball. Like, I want parity in the game. The sport demands parity because that's the entertainment value. That is the take. And if it was happening to the Philadelphia Phillies, I would be on here telling you, everybody else's team sucks. We're great. We're winning the World Series. So I understand that this is coming from an outside perspective of someone whose team is not doing this exactly. But I don't know. I got to stand by my take. So if you're still mad at me, still be mad at me. I'm not being a crybaby. I'm stating my opinion. Now, what we need to talk about, though, in reality, right? This is not Locked On Dodgers. If you'd like to check out Locked On Dodgers, the guys over there do a wonderful job. But we've got to look now. Okay, the Phillies still have an open spot in their bullpen. Tanner Scott was a guy that a lot of people were looking at for that open spot. Who is left available? So we're going to go through some of the big names that are available in free agency right now as far as relief pitchers are concerned. See if any of these names really strike an interest. Now, the first and foremost, the one that you should really be looking at, Carlos Estevez is still out there. He has not signed with the team yet. I mean, frankly, the Philadelphia Phillies should straight up just re-sign Carlos Estevez. Considering anything else is a priority over that is insane at this point because the market isn't that great outside of Carlos Estevez. Like Kenley Jansen's still out there. Great closer. I don't know who their Phillies are going to use as their closer. Now, if Kenley Jansen signs here, it's going to be him, but they could like Jordan Romano as their closer already. Also, Kenley Jansen's old. He's 37. Right? He's been around forever. I don't know how much he has left in the tank. I get nervous when you get those guys. Even in the bullpen, when you start getting into the late 30s, I get nervous about relying on those guys heavily over the course of a season. David Robertson's still out there. He's turning 40 in a couple months. Like, that's not exactly a spring chicken. Ryan Presley, who was with the Astros last year, is available. Drew Smiley, who was with the Cubs last year, is probably the best lefty left available if you wanted a lefty. Matt Moore is still out there. I don't really have interest in Matt Moore. Joe Kelly, but he's 36, turning 37 over the course of the season. I don't know. I don't see many names on this list, right, that are head and shoulders above what Carlos Estevez was for the Philadelphia Phillies last year. I mean, you could make an argument for any of those names I just listed to say, okay, they're slightly better than Carlos Estevez. I like this about them better. Totally fine. I'm not saying, well, they all stink compared to Carlos Estevez. I'm just saying that I don't see – there's not like this clear – Tanner Scott was clearly better, in my opinion. He would have been a better option if you had gone out and signed him, but he goes to LA. So now you've got to look at his situation and say, well, what's our next best move? I think it's absolutely a no-brainer to say, let's go get Estevez. I also think if you're going to do continuity, do continuity. The Phillies have made some changes in the roster as far as adding Jesus Luzardo and signing Max Kepler and doing all these Jordan Romano and Joe Ross and these guys that they've added to the bullpen. But if you can bring back a guy that was talented for you this past year, that is comfortable with this locker room, Carlos Estevez, in case you've forgotten, because maybe you haven't heard this at all. I mentioned it a couple times, but you missed the episode, whatever. Estevez was a big part of the culture in the bullpen after getting here, after the Phillies acquired him from LA. Like, he was a guy that was a veteran presence in that bullpen, and he talked about it. Guys in the bullpen talked about it. He was a big part of them, like, feeling a little bit more comfortable. So I understand he gave up the grand slam to Lindor. It's one pitch on a season where he was darn good for the Angels and darn good for the Phillies. And I'm not going to say, well, Carlos Estevez, he's a choker. Because of that one pitch, he got put in a tough spot. The Phillies just didn't do enough offensively in that series. But I'm not here to relitigate the NLDS. Like, no. Bottom line is this. I don't see a significantly better option for guys that have not been on the Phillies or have not been on the Phillies recently. I mean, Hector Neris is out there available if you want Hector Neris again. I don't see a starkly better option than Carlos Estevez. So at that point, you might as well go bring back the guy that you know works here and is familiar here and the fan base knows and He knows the manager and the pitching coach, and it just feels like it makes the most sense. And we've already all offseason been having the conversation of, do they bring back Hoffman or do they bring back Estevez, and kind of comparing those two guys. Now, Hoffman's already signed with the Toronto Blue Jays. By the way, Anthony Santander, who we brought up earlier in the offseason, is like a potential outfield option for the Philadelphia Phillies if they want to make a crazy move and get a starter. He's in agreement on contract with the Toronto Blue Jays. So the Blue Jays having a quiet, nice offseason. Santander, Hoffman. Now, they're probably upset because they wanted Roki Sasaki, and he ends up going to the Dodgers. But you're looking at a situation where the free agent market, the names that you recognize, you're starting to kind of wrap up with them being signed. I'm trying to think of the big names that are still out there. Probably one of the biggest is Alex Bregman. He may be the biggest. I got to go do a little bit more research on that in general. But that doesn't matter unless the Phillies move Bohm, and those rumors have died down significantly. So if I'm the Phillies, I'm calling Estevez. I'm holding him on the phone line until we come up with a contract decision. He is coming back. He's going to be the last spot you need filled in the bullpen. And then you can say, okay, we are ready to go. Our roster is pretty much locked in. Let's figure out if we need to make some depth changes or if there's anyone that falls through the cracks in free agency, but let's start putting together our plan for this year. That's where I would be at if I was Dave Dombrowski and Sam Fuld and Preston Mattingly and the guys making these decisions in the front office. So Tanner Scott to the Dodgers. Maybe that's the universe just kicking me in the teeth saying, dude, stop complaining about the Dodgers. No, I'm going to continue to complain about the Dodgers. And I actually got a question about something that's a little bit further even down the line than I went when it comes to criticism of the Dodgers offseason that I'm actually going to defend the Dodgers on. And then you've got to start looking for the Phillies. My argument would be Carlos Estevez because none of the other names really they don't move the needle much more or more at all than Estevez does for me. So that's priority number one if I'm the Philadelphia Phillies president of baseball operations. But it's Dave Dombrowski, so we'll see what he does. And trust me, he deserves that job over me. Coming up, we're going to answer some Mailbag Monday questions. We're going to start with a question about the Philadelphia Phillies roster and what grade I'd give them. We'll talk about that coming up as we continue today's episode. All right, let's talk FanDuel first, though, because from the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team, the Birds, or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. We also have, right, you're talking about the NFL playoffs, the college national, the Natties tonight. So if you're listening to this before you go ahead and watch that game between the Bucks and the Fighting Irish, go ahead and check them out. You can bet that on FanDuel as well. I mean, there's so much you can do on there. It's such a great time of year for sports. Talking about the NFL, the championship game weekend is right around the corner in the NFL. They've got you covered with everything. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so let's go into some Mailbag Monday questions. If you want to participate in Mailbag Monday next time around, you've just got to follow at @LO_Phillies on Twitter, or you got to follow me on Twitter at ConnorThomas975. I always retweet just about everything that I post on the Locked On Phillies account from my personal account, just to go ahead and there's a word that's not coming to me about extending the audience. Amplify. Yeah, amplify the audience that it reaches. See, I knew it was going to come to me. But if you want to, I put out a tweet over the weekend. You can respond in the comments with questions. I try and get to as many as possible on the next episode, as long as they're like relevant to the Phillies. So yeah, we got some good ones today to get into. The first one that we're going to come back. Oh, actually, we got one that just came in recently. So we've got three to talk about. But I'm going to start with the one I promised. This is from Ed Holinsky at Mr. Ed 315. And he asked me, what letter grade do you give the Phillies front office for their efforts so far at a roster construction for this upcoming season, and why? So basically, how would you grade out the Phillies offseason so far? This is a tough thing, right? because there's a lot of things you have to weigh in your evaluation of the offseason. Do you look at the total talent level of the roster? If that was the case, you'd have to give them an A. I can't go A+ because of what the Dodgers have done, but I'd have to give the Philadelphia Phillies an A because I look at their roster and I say, this team's incredibly talented. But a big part of that reason is guys that they've acquired in previous offseasons, not this one. They haven't really done all that much this offseason. Even though I love the Jesus Luzardo trade, the Max Kepler signing is okay. The Jordan Romano signing is all right. The Joe Ross signing is fine. I mean, I'm not saying any of these players stink. I'm just saying, like, they're not big-time, crazy splash moves. It's not like Dave Dombrowski is having a masterclass of an offseason, at least what we think right now. We could go into the season and Kepler could hit like 260 with 30 bombs, and Jordan Romano could be an all-star, and Joe Ross could have to step into the rotation for some reason, and it'd be great and be the next Spencer Turnbull or Michael Lorenzen or Matt Strom as far as a swing starter. But as of right now, I would probably have to, like, looking at what they've actually done this offseason compared to expectations, I'm going to give Dave Dombrowski a B- so far. Like, the moves they didn't make, I get. They weren't going to get Soto as much as I would have loved them to, as much as I thought they still should have made an offer and given a better run at that. They weren't going to get him, right? Too much payroll already committed to other big-time players. Hoffman had 2 physicals rejected. So if you want them to bring back Jeff Hoffman, doesn't really, you can understand why they didn't. The Alec Boehm trade I thought was silly from the start, and the value wasn't really there. That's probably the biggest mark on the Phillies offseason, is that I think they misplayed the Alec Boehm trade opportunity. But I didn't want to trade it to begin with, so I don't think, like, that's a huge deal. That doesn't kill your season, but they were just desperate to try and change some stuff. I don't know what they could have really done more, because clearly the value wasn't there. I think it's just they thought more people would value Alec Boehm and they didn't. But that's the biggest knock on the offseason. The signings, while they're not like splash signings, nothing that they've done have I been like, well, that doesn't make any sense. They're filling holes in their roster and they have a lot of guys already locked down. So I would go with a B- for this offseason so far. The reason that grade is low, again, kind of weirdly handled the Alec Boehm situation. So far, that could change, and the signings aren't really splashy. But hopefully that answers your question, Ed. Let's go to this one from Chris that I just saw now in the replies to the tweet. He asked, if the Phillies don't sign Estevez or another big piece in the bullpen, how would you rate their bullpen now compared to other contenders? This kind of builds nicely off of our first segment. They're still great. They're still one of the top 5 bullpens in baseball. Like, at this moment, I think the Philadelphia Phillies are one of the top 5 bullpens in baseball. And that might be crazy to say for a unit that lost Carlos Estevez and Jeff Hoffman to free agency. And Jeff Hoffman is already signed with another team. That's why I think Carlos Estevez is going to be a big part of it. But I think this is a breakout year for Ryan Kirkland. Like, an unbelievable breakout year for Ryan Kirkland. I think Matt Strom is still good. I think Jordan Romano has major upside. I think you have some guys that fill in the cracks well, in Tanner Banks and Jose Ruiz. Like, I think you're in a solid situation with the bullpen. I think Jose Alvarado has a bounce back year. He was good in like the final month or so of the season. He just had like a weird year, but I think he is going to get back to closer to his dominant self. Like, I think the Phillies have a really good bullpen. They're top 5 in baseball, in my opinion. But last year, there was a strong argument to be made that they were like top 1 or 2. So they have taken a bit of a step back. That if they sign Estevez, they put themselves back into that top 1 or 2 conversation. So we'll see if they do that. So hopefully that answers your question there, Chris. But they're right up there with other contenders' bullpens. And, like, I'm talking about bullpen rankings there when I say they're top 5. There's some contenders that their strength is not the bullpen. And they're built on just like, oh, our offense is unbelievable. Or like, we're a top 5 team, but we don't have a top 5 bullpen. So one of those top 5 bullpens, like, I don't know. I think the Cleveland Guardians have a really good bullpen. I don't know that they're truly contenders, right? Like, they had a nice year last year. So my point is this. The Phillies, compared to other contenders, very good bullpen still. I'm not overly worried about that right now. Just might not be as good as it was last year when it was arguably the best in baseball. The final question here from Steve Beecher here. He asked, with all the Dodgers moves, does it seem like a lockout is looming, or will MLB address it next offseason? What he is talking about is the collective bargaining agreement. There will be a chance to renegotiate it coming up. The current one expires in 2026. So I believe it's after this season, this next offseason, there will be CBA stuff to break down. You'll need a new CBA agreed upon between the players union and the owners, and they'll have to run through all of that, which is always fun because nobody likes to agree on anything anymore. I don't know how much they can or will address the situation with the Dodgers in like the CBA. I don't think that you're going to see, unless the Dodgers win like 140 games this year and win the World Series going away, and just like they clearly demonstrate that baseball doesn't have as much parity as it needs to have. I don't think you're going to see any type of like major push for change on that front. I think this is a developing situation that we'll have to see over the next couple of years how it plays out. So I don't think it plays into the CBA. I'm very interested to see what the arguments are, though, because there are going to be a bunch of different things technology-wise, rules-wise. Umpiring has been terrible recently in Major League Baseball. Now, professional officiating in general is just miserable sometimes. And there are good umpires. There are also bad umpires. But there is technology now that people are going to have to talk about whether they should introduce to the Major League game, rule changes, stuff like that. Baseball is fighting this crisis of how do we make our sport more interesting? How do we change with the times? And they're behind the eight ball because for so long, baseball didn't change with the times. So these big-time CBAs, collective bargaining agreement, negotiations. That's the word. I can't find my words today. They've become kind of more striking in the past as far as changes that they make to the game. I do not think this will be something that gets addressed in the CBA, but I don't know. Again, it depends how this year goes. It depends how the rest of this offseason goes. It depends about the feelings of the players and the owners around baseball. Coming up next, we're going to take a peek. And by the way, sorry, before we move into our final segment, thank you so much to everybody who chimed in with Mailbag Monday questions. We're going to do that every weekend leading up to the start of the regular season. We may start it partway through or stop it partway through spring training, depending on how much like news we get there, because there will be games and stuff to react to and a lot of fun stuff that once baseball is actually getting played again to break down. But we're going to continue to do that. We got 2 questions that we answered on last week's episode. We got 3 questions that we answered on this week's episode. My dream, and this is not because I don't want to come up with content for you guys, but my dream would be to get enough Mailbag Monday questions to do a whole episode on just mailbag questions. And my reason for that is I want to make sure that I'm answering the things that you guys want to hear about. And I think I do a solid job of hitting the big topics that that are going on with the Phillies. But in this time in the offseason, there isn't that much news and there's a lot of stuff rattling around your head. And I might not think the same way as you, and I may not consider certain things because I don't think about the team in the same vein that some fans do. And please, by all means, if there's something you want me to talk about that I haven't brought up and you have a question you want me to answer, we're going to do Mailbag Monday again next Monday. Would love for you to get your questions in. So thank you to Chris, Ed, and Steve who got their questions in for this week's episode. Coming up next, we're going to just take a look at what is next for the Philadelphia Phillies. And we're also going to talk about our off the poll question that will be asked on Twitter for Wednesday's episode. So still more work to do on today's episode of Locked On Phillies. And we are going to discuss more coming up next. Let's talk about Rocket Money first, though, because Rocket Money can help you find subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice. You ever seen that happen? Just like, oh, I have this account and I have this account. Dude, I swear it's happened to me once. So I used to have roommates, obviously. I live by myself now, but we had like this membership to a streaming service. And then I got another one when I moved in by myself, and I was paying for both of them. It was crazy. I was like, what am I doing? Not only do I barely use this thing, but I'm paying for it twice. Rocket Money would have helped me found that way faster than I did. They're big time to help you make sure you have a handle on your personal finances. They're a personal finance app, Rocket Money is, that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. You got to check it out. You got to make sure that you got everything locked in, especially if you're maybe saving up for, I don't know, a spring training trip, if you're saving up for summer baseball trips, or if you're saving up for a look at the big game for the Birds. Yeah, you might want tickets to New Orleans. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money so you can afford those things. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Again, go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon. By the way, I just want to bring this up, holiday today, MLK Day. So if you had off work, hopefully you enjoyed that day off. And of course, we know why this holiday is so important to the American people, the equality that Martin Luther King Jr. fought for. It's an important thing that we still, listen, it's still a conversation today because there's still work to be done on that today. But it is a day to remember the work that has been done to fight for equality in this country and the work still to do. So baseline, hope you enjoyed your day off. Further than that, take a second to reflect today. That's it. I know you got free time because everybody had the day off, but damn podcasters and radio hosts. I don't get any holidays off. But that's okay. Somebody's got to host Locked On Phillies, and I'm happy to do it. And, of course, we got to talk about on the radio today the Eagles winning in the NFC divisional round in a snow game. I wish we had snow baseball, but obviously and there have been snow baseball games. But obviously it would be a little bit more difficult to play baseball in the snow than it is football. But back to the task at hand, which is the Philadelphia Phillies, and just a general, like, kind of what's next look. I always do this after big moves, and we didn't really do this for the Roki Sasaki signing. We didn't really do this. And now Tanner Scott has signed. So, like, the landscape of baseball has shifted a little bit over the weekend, and now we're looking at a situation where two big-time pitchers are off the board, and they both went to the best team in baseball that happens to be in your league. Yeah, it sucks. But bottom line, now it's time to reevaluate. So what's next for the Philadelphia Phillies? We already talked about the Carlos Estevez thing. I think you should be on the horn with his agent constantly, and him constantly. I think Dave Dombrowski, the second you saw Tanner Scott sign with the Dodgers, which that news came down yesterday, phone Carlos Estevez, yo, dude, let's get this worked out because people are leaving the dance and you don't want to be the last person left without anybody to go home with, right? I mean, it's not the world's greatest analogy for that, but you don't want to be sitting there in mid-February saying, well, we don't have another major league caliber reliever to bring to camp because we just absolutely sat on our hands and played hardball with a guy. Hardball. Did I just say hardball? Like the coach of the Ravens and the coach of the Chargers. Play hardball with a guy that was pretty darn good for us this past year. So work out the final spot in the bullpen first and foremost. I think it should be Estevez. I already made my case earlier in the episode. The next thing you got to do, we're going to start taking a look at the depth of the Philadelphia Phillies team. Like, how much confidence do you have in guys like Weston Wilson or Cody Clemens? I mean, we talked about the backup catcher position, so we'll probably leave that one out because you know my thoughts on Rafael Marchand getting that opportunity over Garrett Stubbs this year. I believe that is the right play. I believe that is what the Phillies should do. We'll see what they will do. But you get even deeper into the margins. Once you get your bullpen spots filled, your rotation is locked down, your bullpen will be locked down. Your starters will all basically be locked down besides the position battle in center field, trying to figure out if it's Marsh or Rojas. So the only thing really left to talk about is the depth. That's why I need the Phillies to do something because, man, I don't know how many times we could really break down this roster for, like, without saying, hey, they're good, but how good are they? Did they take a step forward this year, a step back, or did they not really do that much in free agency? And if they didn't do that much over the offseason, well, like, how much different can we expect it to be? Like, that conversation will persist for the next 2 months until we get to the regular season of baseball. But, I mean, there's only so much to be said as far as that's concerned. So I think the Phillies still have some ancillary moves to make. And, like, I don't know, we had a bunch of guys signed through international signings for the Phillies. There were like 30-some guys they added. They're all minor league guys, but there will be other things here and there to talk about. But that's what's next for the Philadelphia Phillies as they continue to work their way through this offseason. Let me get you the off the poll question real quick. So I'm going to tweet this out later tonight from our Locked On Phillies Twitter account. I'll retweet it from my personal account. at Connor Thomas 975. This is a simple one, and it was our main thing this episode. So with Tanner Scott signing with the Dodgers, do you want the Philadelphia Phillies to bring back reliever Carlos Estevez? Now, you might say, easy yes. But remember, there are going to be some people to think about, well, giving up that grand slam to Lindor. It's not as cut and dry of an answer as you might think. I might not have as cut and dry of an answer as you might think. You won't get my answer till Wednesday, though, when we review what you vote on the poll. So that's going to be the poll. I'm going to put that out. We'll recap it on Wednesday. And yeah, I mean, big weekend for the Dodgers. Not so much for the Phillies. Gotta kind of just reevaluate now and see what next there is to do. You still have a great baseball team. The Phillies are still very good. And it's still January. So, everybody, it's okay. I'll talk to you. Oh, sorry. Let me give my wrap-up little speech here. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, and hitting that subscribe button on the Locked On Phillies YouTube channel. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I will talk to you next time on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.